Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Lumen, and two of the most popular people from OneyPlays just spent almost an entire day streaming about how miserable that part of their lives apparently was. Dong and Julian were streaming for something like 20 hours, and it turned into this increasingly uncomfortable argument about Newgrounds and everyone connected to that old animation group. At first, it sounded like they were talking about why they left, but then out of nowhere, Dong started calling Newgrounds a cult and making accusations about them being pedos. And then Julian started talking about how seeing Smiling Friends and other successful animations has become genuinely painful for him, and how they've spent years afraid someone might try to kill them for speaking out about this. Like, come on buddy, I don't think anyone cares that much. Anyway, eventually, Dong and Julian just started arguing with each other because one of them wanted to keep on going and the other one wanted to stop. This was all happening live for 20 hours. They were clearly exhausted and upset and still digging through drama that happened almost 10 years ago while thousands of people watched. And by the end, it barely felt like they were exposing OneyPlays. It felt more like two people who were just messing up their lives even more every single time they opened their mouths. This is the clip that popped off. Julian is there talking and explaining how painful it is for him to see shows like Smiling Friends, The Amazing Digital Circus, and Has-Been Hotel become more successful than him. He says it's tormenting him. Poor baby. And I understand being jealous of someone who came from the same group of friends, but Julian isn't talking like someone who's just a little bit annoyed when he sees one of those shows. This man sounds like every time one of those cartoons gets mentioned, he gets a Vietnam flashback. It sounds uncomfortable and kind of pathetic. It's one of those people that spends his entire life just comparing himself to other people. Here, see for yourself.
There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Seeing a Smiling Friends DVD at the store freaked me out. Seeing everybody draw porn of Digital Circus freaks me out.
It freaks you out?
It makes me feel like I can't participate in the world anymore.
Oh no. Go on, King, tell him.
It's something that I need to be able to figure out. I mentioned a few minutes ago that, like, way back at the beginning when Dee Dee didn't want to speak about these things, I threatened to break up with him over it because I was like, I feel like this is unethical. I feel like it needs to be spoken up about. I feel like people are gonna get hurt. People got hurt anyway.
Who?
There's a really big problem. It's been tormenting for me for years.
Aww.
That things related to OneyPlays, Smiling Friends, Digital Circus, etc. Has been like all this stuff. It bothers me a lot. It freaks me out that, like, these things are super popular.
So essentially the whole stream was like that. What you just heard was just the beginning when it was a little bit more normal. But essentially, Julian would say something crazy, Dong would agree with the basic idea, and then they would just go on to say something even crazier. And then they would just keep on doing that over and over and over. And instead of just stopping or taking a break, they just kept on validating each other until things that probably started as normal complaints turned into some huge explanation of how everything in their lives went wrong. And for the people who didn't watch OneyPlays back on the day, Dong and Julian started appearing regularly around 2016, and people loved them. A lot of fans still consider that one of the best periods of the channel. Then they left around 2018, and at that time, the explanation was mostly that living in Los Angeles was expensive and that they wanted to spend more time working on 1-1 games. Which made sense, but what no one thought was that this was just the beginning of a decade-long blood feud between them. And as the years went on, Dong and Julian kept on bringing more problems they had in that entire period, and every time they talked about it, the story sounded worse. What started as we wanted to leave and work on our own projects slowly turned into we were trapped around horrible people and no one understands how miserable we were. This stream was basically every version of the story finally coming together. Then after all that crying, Dong starts complaining about Newgrounds, and this is where it stops being a normal internet drama story and it turns into something a little bit more serious. He calls the site a cult and starts making allegations about adults behaving inappropriately around minors. He also seems to suggest that other people in the circle knew about it or even helped protect it. This is a huge accusation to casually just drop during an emotional stream. This would be life-ruining if true. And in the clips being shared, there is no clear moment where he slows down and explains anything or mention who he's even talking about. He just keeps talking about Newgrounds in general. So now everyone who's ever connected to this whole story is just sitting there and wondering if he was talking about them. Maybe he had specific people in mind, but if he does, saying it in a live stream like this is probably the worst possible way to deal with it. Maybe you should call the authorities. And if you think I'm lying or taking it out of context, well then hear it for yourself.
Sounding awfully a lot like a cult. Out of any of these online websites and communities I've seen, actually Newgrounds kind of does feel the closest to that to me. I haven't seen this kind of loyalty being embedded into so many other websites the same kind of way. It is really fucking weird.
Okay.
And like I said, it's driving people insane behind the scenes. And just questionable things in general. Like, I was really confused why so many people that we ran into around Newgrounds... Sure, yeah, the neo-Nazi over there is already a big enough problem. But what's with that one over there? Why are you all contacting a 14-year-old to befriend right now? You're all in your 30s.
Damn, bro.
What is that about? Why does this keep happening? Because this is like the third one now.
Man, if you're going to accuse someone of something this serious, you need to be clear and specific, like this is not a joke. You need to explain who you're talking about and what actually happened. Newgrounds has existed for decades. A massive number of artists, animators, and game developers came through that site. You can't just throw a giant accusation over the entire community and then expect people to guess who you're talking about. All this does is make you sound worse, and it gives everyone who already believes that you're crazy more ammunition. Then Ding Dong also starts going after Zack and Smiling Friends. He criticizes the show and says that people around Chris and Zack are part of this racist far-right crowd that has been poisoning the whole scene. He's clearly trying to paint Zack in the worst light possible because he's very clearly jealous of the success he's had, and instead of being a good friend and being happy for him and the success he's had, he has to smear him with anything he can come up with. Then they started rewriting everything that happened during the OneyPlays era. Ding Dong says there was tension with Chris almost from the beginning. He says that he was the happiest when it was only him and Julian talking, and he even starts questioning whether the delayed Yik finale was being used to keep them busy so that they could work on their own projects. From his perspective, a delay isn't just a delay. No, it's Chris trying to hold them back from the background. You see, they're actually super great and cool and the best people ever. It's just that everyone else is so mean that they're trying to hold them back and make them unable to succeed.
But I guess that is what people were taking in, because I did even see it back at the time that people had brought up, like, oh my god, yeah, like, they're, like, calling him out a lot and everything. It seems like none of them are really getting along, which is surprising. I remember I was, like, giggling like crazy during all of it. I thought I was in high spirits, but yeah, no, I picked up on it. I was in high spirits when I got to talk to Julian. It was, I think it was pretty obvious that there was tension between everybody. And that was why there was tension between everybody. No one wanted you to go make a big deal of this either, and if anything, it's starting to feel like you're doing this because you're trying to, like, keep us held on to. And I do think that was the intention. I think the finale was supposed to be a thing of keeping us stalled out and, like, continuously as a factor here, which is why every single time it got brought up after the first time, it always had to be some vague kind of insult slung towards our direction, like we messed everything up. And I can also speak to this. I did get to see there was a direct image board post that I'm pretty sure came right from him to insist that we messed up the entire thing. Which, if you guys follow us and if you know anything about us, no. We commit ourselves very hard to the things we do. It's why I put up with all that to play Yeek to begin with, even when the game froze and even with all the grinding, and that's why I reverse engineered the game. No, I put a lot of effort in, actually.
I believe they were unhappy. That part is not difficult to believe. But when you spend almost 10 years going back through the same period, your memories start to change a bit. And something that once looked like it was just people being bad at management now starts looking like purposefully trying to fuck with you. And Julian starts talking about how hard it is to believe that nobody noticed how miserable they were back then. But the thing he doesn't seem to understand is that people can read his mind, so if he felt a certain kind of way, people couldn't tell. And now at this point, Ding Dong starts sounding a little uncomfortable with how far Julian wants to take this conversation, and he tries to stop the live stream, but Julian keeps pushing. And because these two live together and work together, Ding Dong can't just end the stream and go home. He is already home. So now a conversation about OneyPlays start turning into an argument about whether Ding Dong is supporting Julian enough. And unexpectedly, once the clips reached X, people absolutely tore them a new one. Most of the reactions were some version of "these two have completely lost their minds." People said they needed therapy. Other people called the whole stream just pathetic and started reposting random sections without giving any context. That always happens when someone has a breakdown online, but Dong and Julian also made it incredibly easy by staying live almost an entire day, throwing accusations left and right like they were candy. They have both been online for years, so they should know how this whole clipping thing works. And instead of just shutting up, they just kept on giving people more material. In one section, Julian also talks about self-harm and how much Ding Dong's support means to him. It is 100% clear they have some mental issues going on upstairs. And while I would hate for anyone to feel this way, you can't just blame it on imaginary problems you just made up. This legitimately sounds like the ramblings of an insane person, where they scream that the homeless man down the street is colluding with the FBI to get them arrested. And they feel so bad about this delusion that they start getting depressed. Now in general, a lot of people have looked at this whole situation and immediately called it jealousy. And duh, this is obviously 99% jealousy and 1% mental derangement. The whole thing with Zach making smiling friends and stuff, I bet it hurts. But instead of trying to make success for themselves, they just do nothing and start criticizing everyone for no reason. And by the end of the stream, it didn't really matter what Ding Dong and Julian originally wanted to expose. They had spent so long talking that the breakdown itself became the story. People were no longer focused on whether they had been treated badly years ago or not. Instead, they were watching two former OneyPlays members accuse almost every old friend of colluding against them or belonging to a weird pedophile cult. Maybe some of what they said is true, but this stream was the worst possible way to convince anyone. They just sounded bitter. And by going on this big old ramble, all they accomplished was making everything worse. Anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about. If you liked the video, please give me a like and subscribe. This is a very small channel, and just liking the video and subscribing does more than you can imagine. Thank you for watching this far, and have a nice day.